Hello and welcome to Dilston Physic Gardens Wellbeing sessions. My name's Eleanor Darley. I'm an artist and transpersonal arts counsellor, so art therapist, and I work mainly with the plants and flowers in particular. And today I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey of how you can use the artistic process to encounter the medicine of the plants themselves. And the art, bring an aliveness of that plant medicine into your work, the gesture and the life force that the plants actually are working with you alongside. And I'm here in Devon. It's actually a beautiful day. It's actually not cold. Been in the river. So I'm going to just take you through very simple artistic techniques and observation techniques, and through that how you work not only to observe but also to work with your inner world at the same time, so letting free your imagination process at the same time, because botanical art is traditionally a very exact science. Actually, you observe the plant exactly, and every detail has to be the same specification as the plant itself. So exact length of a stem, for example, that you are seeing has to also appear on your paper. But I'm going to introduce you to a way of working where you are really observing really intensely, but you're also freeing up the imaginative space. So I'm going to ask you to maybe grab a few things if you want to take part, or we want to follow afterwards, but just a few fundamental things to get started. So I like to work in pen. I'm going to show you because sometimes in pencil we have this temptation of rubbing out, and you need permission to be able to make mistakes and not worry about what form's going to come on to your page. So fine liner pens, really good. Also biros. So and pencils are good if you know you can let yourself be free. Charcoal, really recommend working in charcoal. There's something about, you can use thick, thin, anything you can grab, even bits of coal from an outside fire that have charcoaled themselves I like to use. And there's something so good because it's so of nature itself that it lends itself to connection with it is carbon, so it is of plants. It lends itself to this connection really with the closeness of nature. The other thing that I would recommend that you bring is maybe something colour, but some inks or watercolour you can use. Also just black ink is perfect. This is some ink I've made from acorns, so you can make ink from the acorn caps or the oak gall. So it's quite a light, slightly purpley black ink, and also I like to use really jet black ink as well. So, and I'll take you through that, and we'll come on to why and how it's good. So also choose just a few brushes. They can be any thickness. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to work with how to be kind of spontaneous so that you're not worried about brush size. But saying that, a big one can be good to play with, really fine ones or medium ones, it's really up to you what you have as well. But any of those will be good, and we can use them in the process. Paper wise, I like to work with slightly textured watercolour paper. I don't know if you can see that, or the thick lovely thick, really sort of, the thick natural papers. Or you can bring rough paper, or but there's a trick that I always like to encourage, and that is to use as good quality paper as possible, even if you're playing, if you can allow yourself that freedom, because sometimes you might think you're just doing a quick rough sketch of something or a quick thing, but it's actually captured the gesture of the plant or whatever you're drawing, and then you can frame it, or you can use it in more detail. So I'm going to take you to meet the plants now. So I'm here with this amazing heather bush. It's been in flower for a few weeks, and it's absolutely glorious. I'm going to take you through a few processes that are interchangeable to how you start with connecting to the plant. So you can chop and change this around depending on what you feel instinctively you'd like, the kind of drawing you'd like to do first. But the first thing we'll do is to really remember that you're an organ of perception. You're not just your eyes and your hand and your brain in the drawing process. Your whole being is in connection, can be in connection with the objective that you're drawing. In this case, another living being as a plant. So I want to encourage you to remember that you are in relationship to that other living being, and that there's a life force in you. There's a life force in that, and that in the meeting of this other being, there's an exchange going on of life force. So I had a very strong experience, age about 10 or 11, where I realised, and it was one of those acts of grace where I had to draw a plant for some homework, and I was in front of a foxglove, and that foxglove did the drawing. I didn't do it, and that sounds very fantastical and mystical, but I was very aware as I was drawing it that I wasn't drawing it, and it happened again with a hollyhock. And in fact, the hollyhock that I drew with this experience, I really felt that spirit of that plant was really guiding my hand, and I had never drawn like that before. And in fact, I kept that drawing. I must have been around a little bit older when I did that, but I kept that drawing on my door for years because it was like a secret that I had uncovered. So there is this beautiful mystical nature connected to this. If you can really allow your objective mind to have a rest, and that you can be in this wholeness of relationship, in a way it's a beautiful attitude to have of knowing nothing that will come out, that you know that will come out on the page, knowing nothing in terms of any preconceptions about what the medicine of a plant might be, because sometimes we know the properties of plants, and that scientific knowing might get in the way of really what's wanting to come out through the drawing and through in relationship. So the first thing I would say is to just soften that place where you've also got to think you've got to produce something that's exactly like this, the form of this plant. Soften the place of any knowing and just come into looking. So it is really a beginning of a meditation that you can start with. And I would encourage you to look as closely as possible. Imagine you've never ever looked before. So you really, really look at the detail of the plant. Notice how many stamens there are, the form, the shade of the colour. Like I've never noticed how the actual shape of each individual tiny, tiny, tiny leaf form there is on the branches of this, and how it changes from being very next to the flowers, how completely different it is. And you spend time looking and really connecting, taking in the form. So if you close your eyes, if you close your eyes, see if you can actually see that plant again. And go back to looking, see if you notice something different. What can you recall? What can't you recall? And then the first thing perhaps I would tell you to do is to create as detailed a drawing as possible. Not worrying that you can draw or you can't draw. It's literally eyes to as much on the plant as possible rather than on your page. So you're really just noticing the form. This might take a long time, maybe a good half an hour, if you can allow yourself that deep, meditative, free space. Draw as much detail as possible, get to know it. Don't worry about what it looks like, just get to know it, get to know it, get to know it, get to know it. And keep just like you're copying, like you're mimicking. Just get to know it as much as possible. And also let your eye wander, like, oh, I've done that bit, I've done this bit. Just go to it, just fixate on a point. We're at a place in our collective behaviours where we are so easily distracted. We've got 2 seconds on the phone. Our place of concentration on something outside ourselves, it has become habitually changeable, so we distract ourselves. So we can acknowledge that. So I might concentrate on one bit for a moment, but I'm drawn to the next bit. Let's just be gentle with that, because if you can stay on one section for 20 minutes, perfect. If you can't, then just be gentle with yourself if you get distracted, but just keep with the plant for that about 20 minutes, half an hour. Okay, so I've just been sitting and looking at the plant, and actually the most beautiful part of this meditation is seeing the bees visit over and over and over and over. Anyway, I'm saying. So, another exercise is to really just look at the plant and not your page. So take a piece of charcoal, let your hand wander, keep it really, really loose. Practice first if you can, you're not holding it really tightly, just keep it loose as if and with your wrist loose, and same thing as before of doing the detailed picture. You're copy the form, just feel it, almost feel it in your belly, if that makes sense. You're just keeping your connection tight by feeling it inside you. It doesn't matter where your pen is really going, although you are also keeping your connection to the charcoal in your hand and your core and your eyes and the plant itself. So just moving your eyes as you just draw. Copying the forms just as you see them, not looking down if possible. You're just getting to know the form of the plant. And then when you're playing really, you're playing but you're connecting. And then when you've done it with one hand, I want you to do it again with the other hand. Notice the difference. So you can look a little bit, but I'd encourage you just to keep a connection to the plant itself. And you might find it's a bit slower on this hand, but with that slowness comes a little bit actually more freedom. You'd think it was the opposite, but your dominant hand, whether it's usually your right, but for those also with left-handed, it becomes very connected to habit, so you don't feel as much as you might with your less dominant hand. So keep looking at the plant as much as possible. If your eyes wander down, don't worry. So I don't know if you can see that. It's just, usually it captures more of the gesture. But also on the right hand, it might look like a scribble, but it's captured the movement of the plant. I know that from doing this many times. It captures something, and it's really beautiful to keep hold of these and not judge them, disregard them, and you can repeat that process a few times. And you might do it with pen, you might do it with pencil, you don't have to just do it with the charcoal. But what's another good exercise is like very quick drawing with the charcoal. So you can choose which hand, speed it up. You've got 1 minute, that's it. Capture as much as the plant as possible. Remember, you've got to know it a little bit more, so the form has started to actually live inside you as well. That's kind of what we're aiming for, is this. It informs you, and then your plant, then your drawing is informed by this exchange of connection of its form. So there's 1 minute. So another great exercise to do is, once you've done the detailed, or you've been drawing detailed drawing, or you've been drawing a little while, is to close your eyes and just connect back to the plant. See if you can just feel it, know it, see what's there. See if something can come just from memory. find you don't remember much at all, but just see if something's there. Keep it, we'll look at it later. So another, and this is my favourite thing to do, is to, normally I use black ink, in the same way almost with the charcoal drawings, letting go into this freer movement of working with the plant is to take some ink and you can capture the gesture of the plant just in a few. So play with it, allow yourself that freedom. Still copying, still looking at the plant. I'm holding the pen from the paintbrush from the top because the less grip I have, the less control my mind's trying to impose on the picture. So it encourages me to keep looking, keep feeling, because you're kind of getting out of this knowing. I could continue, and you can continue again, like in the same way of just I use a different ink. We're just having a couple of seconds, right or left hand. So I'm using my oak ink. So just, I've mixed it a bit with the red, but that's quite good because it's such a purpley, beautiful purpley plant. Hold it lightly again and just, yeah, you had a few seconds only to draw something. And we'll look at these in review, because it's really important to keep away from judging what you're doing when you're doing this. Now, the next thing I would give to you as an opportunity, as a beautiful exercise, is to spend some time with the plant and write from it. So it's like we're in a, as I've talked about, we're in a kind of relationship here. What is it telling me? Who is it? What is Heather? Like, how can I merge? What is this merging process going on here with me? What medicine does it have for me? What part of my inner world or my consciousness and the intelligence of this plant are going to have a conversation? So it's really good to have a conversation with the plant. And usually I start this, or encourage people to start with just the title, I am Heather, or the plant that you're drawing. I am Heather, and see what comes. So I'm going to do this as well, and I'm going to do this now, and then I will share what I write as well as part of the review process. And when you write, I really encourage you, in the same way we've done the drawing, it's a little bit like holding the pen at the top. and letting go of control. Let whatever words come. Don't judge them. Just let it fall onto the page like a stream of consciousness, if you like, or if a feeling of poetry comes, or if very surprising things come, or just let it be there, get it down, and don't judge it, and then you can work with it later on. You might want to draw out certain sentences or words, but for the first instant, don't judge anything, just let it be there. Let it be there. So I thought it would be a good idea to have a little look at review what we've done through some of the exercises and how you can bring it together, and then just reflect on what the medicine that you've encountered is, what the well-being is. So I'll just give you an example of what I've done in this very short time. So this is actually kind of the sitting and meditating with the plants. Can't really see the detail on this, but I went into the detail of the heather itself and just copied, just mimic, like looking, mimicking. And it's not a particularly alive picture, this, but it made me get to know the plant and really absorb it and just be free. It doesn't, I wouldn't regard this as a big work of art, but it was more of a meditation practice, just to really get close to that plant. And then we worked with the different abstractions. I think this is almost my favourite, capturing, I think that was the left hand, capturing the gesture a little bit more, and here we have some of the ink ones that also there you can see here that there's a bit more of a movement and an aliveness that comes in. Oh yes, that was at the beginning, that was actually right hand and not looking at all, but there's something of the sort of movement and vibrational quality that I learned to recognize from drawings that's in there, and that was a little one from memory, but I know that was right hand, and it's not, for me that one doesn't speak so much, but I will do a little memory exercise in a minute. So, and also there's another way that I want to tell you about that's really, because it comes from sitting with the plant. So it's letting go to the forms that you're seeing, but that also you want to, almost like a doodle, you want to dream into, so that you're allowing what's there in the physical to be really, you're observing it, and you're drawing it. But then there's this free movement that comes from inwardly, where you can let go and dream on the page, almost like if you go into the imagination, and it's like you do when you're doodling or playing, but you're still in connection to this plant. So, and they can occur simultaneously, this observation and this imaginative inner dreaming quality that can come into your art process. And it's not easy necessarily, it's not prescriptive, it's not something you have to do, it's something that can happen if you are just in this process and allowing yourself that process. And it's a dropping of boundaries between the physical and outer world, what's really real, and just allowing something of the inner experience to come forward. That, and from my experience of working with plants, it's sort of like the essence of the plant can come through, or the essence of what needs perhaps attention to in yourself comes through, or perhaps even shadow qualities of difficulties that you're meeting in the world. So for the heather right just now, when I did the free writing, something came that was more of a sort of shadow quality for me, and it's like, it was very much a feeling of, as I sat there, and I could see these thousands and thousands of flowers, and of course we've been in lockdown and there's a certain aloneness that is present, but there's this meeting that almost like, how dare I think I'm alone when there's thousands and thousands of us together in community. Really there is, and there was a more of a get up and go quality that I needed to come. So it said, how could any of us ever be alone? It's not just you. Let go. It's not just you alone. Stand up, calm down. And there was more to it than that, but sunlit now, my warmth comes to you. Let go. Thousands and thousands of flowers, thousands and thousands look over you. We are here in the warmth and the cold. Even when you're frozen, we flower and there is food for you. Even when you're beaten to the ground, floored by all that hurts you in the world, thousands and thousands of us are here, and we are never alone. No one is ever alone. How could any of us ever be alone? It's not just you. Let go. It's not just you alone. Stand up, calm down. So perhaps that's a little bit vulnerable to share, but it's the kind of, it is the nature of the exercise that I'm demonstrating, in that we can be in relationship and receive from the plants themselves. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I also know that the heather flower essence works with this quality of when something becomes very much, something painful becomes very much about you. You can't let go of a wound, and it keeps determining your perception of the world, or you want it noticed, or you want to come from that place. So I'm going to go and investigate that, because I think it speaks to a shadow quality perhaps of myself, of when the wounded ego dominates in the world and informs your choices more than it should, or stops you really being in connection sometimes. So that it's a very subtle process, but if you can be, like I said, let go of the objective mind and be in this open space, nature in its wholeness can start communicating with you in a very free way. And it doesn't have to, it's completely non-scientific, it's completely out of that. We're in the world of the soul, where it's a very intimate space. So somebody could judge that and say, oh, it's rubbish, you just made it up in your head. But it's your inner experience that's important in that space of your relationship with yourself, your relationship with nature in the world. And I know from teaching people or helping people through a therapeutic process, or working with the plants myself, it's not just the problems that arrive, it's inspiration that arrives, and it's surprising to some, and it's just so connects you to the wonder of how the soul can communicate with the world and you intimately. So I wanted to show you also this painting, which is actually about 5 years old, but it shows this quality that I was communicating about sitting in connection and drawing, but then allowing the dreaming process to happen. So you're not judging the doodling quality or the forms that come. And so it's you're still in observation, but you're letting go. And it's quite a childlike place. It's not where perhaps it's This is my judgment, but it's perhaps not the be all and end all of contemporary art in the public sphere, as it were. But it's a very intimate, playful way of really encountering the medicine of the plant. So this was a star magnolia, and I just sat outside in the spring and it's a biro on a canvas. I mean, who does that in terms of, it's just letting I wasn't attached to the outcome, so just doodling in pen. In fact, it's biro and black pen, and just playing, just keeping going, repetitive forms. So doing another one and another one, and then I remember I got to know the inner gesture of the plant. So you sort of can then repeat the forms without looking so much, and then you can go into imagery, and you can see here kind of as a sort of rabbit, and different forms came in between the flowers. Kind of, I can see figures, and figures came, and I just let them come, because, and I know in reflection they can mean something to me, and they can, and people have looked at this picture and really found something for themselves as well. So something magical, or encourages them to let go into a more imaginary realm. But for me, it pinpoints also, it creates a memory of that particular plant and what it brought to me at that time. And there was a whole story around that plant, and who gave it to me, and where it came from, and what the message was from that plant to me personally. And magnolia is a very old genus. It's one of the first flowering trees, and it's part of the evolution that brought that plants ended up being flowers. So it also contacts a very old part in myself, and you can begin to notice that kind of congruence between plants and their nature and where it touches you, and the star quality of the flowers themselves, and the expansion. There is a lot can be read into it, but it's very personal and intimate, and your relationship and your medicine that comes out of it. So you can trust it because you're in relationship. So as a final reflective exercise with the heather. So looking at, I can't see very much of the light, but I really like this one because it just somehow captures some gesture. But I also want to show another process where you can just, this is an experiment for me here as well, just really, what has that plant left me with? Okay, I had quite a process with the writing of it, but what gesture is inside? And there's something for me seeing all those thousands of blooms and seeing the movement in my pictures, and you can also, from the study, a very close-up study, there's certain forms that have left an impression on me, and I'm just going to trust what comes out as a kind of final expression of the plant and its beingness. I'm actually going to use 2 hands because it helps let go of the mind. It helps you go out of your habit life and into your feeling life. So. Oh, it's very pale, you can't see very much, but there's something in there for me. Let me see if I can take you a bit closer. It captures something of the gesture of the plant, and there is a particular, I think even just using two hands, that connectedness of being not alone, that the well-being of this particular plant has brought me is part of it and part of the process. And the blue, and I didn't really think about it, but I chose the blue and the red and the pink, and there's a subtleness in the colour of that heather that brings this warmth, and it's such a dry, when you touch it, it's such a dry plant that it's, you know, and it flowers all through the cold and the rain and everything, and then the sun comes, the bees wake up, and it's there ready, waiting. There's something about this nourishment, yeah, in bleakness, and I suppose that's also the nature of the plant. I think of Scottish moors, or we're here on the moors in Devon, and it's a plant of nourishment in the bleakness. So that's my very open, honest connection to that plant, and I've hoped that I've shown you a little bit of a window into a process that you can use with the plants and the artistic way you can connect to them. If you want to do any more reading, I'd recommend this book, which is The Wholeness of Nature by Goethe. He really talks about this intense observation process or a meditation, particularly with plant forms, so that you get this experience of the wholeness of nature and this, your whole being as an organ of perception. And he looks at lots of different exercises and practices, and I really recommend that. There's also an exhibition at the moment which is wonderful and is online, and it's called The Botanical Mind, and it's the Camden Arts Centre, but you can find it online and throughout history, and really, really wonderful expressions of this plant, how our relationship through art and plant and together with the plant, intelligence of the plants really comes through and is inherited in us. So if you want to explore that further, there are a couple of resources. Also do one-to-one work with people, and online it works still quite well. And I'm doing a longer workshop on March the 6th if you wanted to get in touch and be part of that. So wish you all well, beautiful time now. Gradually it's getting warmer and we can get out into the garden. So take care everybody.